Ilene here is going to answer the first question. Are we minimizing the batterer's opportunities and inclinations to abuse? Are we holding the batterers accountable?
Those are three enormous questions. It's true that there have been laws against family violence for a long time, but the enforcement of those laws has too often been indifferent until just the last couple of decades. In fact, we just marked an anniversary of one Connecticut woman's brave actions, Tracy Thurman of Torrington. What she did helped change domestic violence laws all across the country.
Yes, she did.
But even though we've made some progress, change comes slowly. Ask any mother who's watched her children handed over to an ex-partner she knows to be abusive. I've seen far too many families who have entered the legal and social service systems become suspended in an endless loop of abuse and trauma. It's not a case of any one service provider being to blame. It just seems like the lessons we learn take more than a lifetime. This is a tragedy for the lives caught up in the loop and every wasted lifetime. So you ask about an abuser's opportunity and inclination. Anytime we return a victim or a potential victim to an abusive situation, we authorize more abuse. And until as a society we stop teaching our children the dangerous lie any 3-year-old can repeat, "Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me," we authorize more abuse. Emotional abuse is serious. It is dangerous. Emotional abuse can be deadly. If we started taking emotional abuse more seriously, an abuser's opportunity to abuse might decrease. As to your last question, I don't have stats on this, but an unscientific survey would probably suggest that few batterers end up being held accountable. I would certainly want to see that change, but I think that'll be even harder to accomplish than protecting victims. Now, if we can raise generations of children who are secure and supported enough to have self-regard and respect for others, abusers would ultimately go extinct. The sad thing is society has always tolerated violence and victimization. It's been the status quo. Sometimes we talk a good talk, but just look around. And change is the biggest challenge. But change happens. In our lifetimes, we've seen attitudes change about smoking and drinking and driving, and even just lately, how we take care of our environment. Took long enough for that. With some effort, the same can happen with this. That's why these discussions are so important. Well, Christine, the first thing we have to do is expand the conversation. We have to reframe how we perceive and talk about the problem. We don't usually think about the big picture, but it's been less than 2 generations, not much more than 35 years, that there have been women's centers and shelters. That was a long overdue step forward, but if we stop at this point, all the interventions will eventually be overwhelmed because physical battery is the tip of the iceberg. To decrease all violence, family, dating, workplace, as a society, we have to give emotional abuse more than lip service. Yes. Only a few people realize it right now, but this is the next step in the evolution of the Domestic Violence Initiative. Emotional abuse underlies every other form of abuse and trauma. Till responders, educators, clinicians, and the court system give it more than a theoretical nod, we'll just be going to continue to put out fires, not get to the root of the matter. Right now there are a few paragraphs about emotional abuse in the literature, but that doesn't always get translated into practice, and there are a lot of reasons for this. I'm an emphatic supporter of the work the centers do, but there are budgets and other limitations, and maybe even a tendency to not want to open that can of worms. So the effects of emotional abuse and its remedies in general get pushed to the side. The second thing to consider is the cyclical nature of family violence. There are several cycles, but the one I'm addressing here is the pattern that carries dysfunction from one generation to the next.
Oh, yes.
So when you ask the question, where do you intervene? It's a kind of chicken and egg situation.
Yes.
The most practical point of intervention is most often, but not always, a mother who gets herself and her kids out. She's generally the best client to bring support services. If we can help her repair her damaged psyche from the inside out, we can help her improve her life, her children's future, and the generations that follow. The third consideration in decreasing and eventually in extinguishing family violence goes back to expanding and reframing the issue. In my experience, dysfunction and violence is not about gender. Misogyny contributes, but it's not the determining factor. People with damaged psyches are links in a chain of dysfunction. How that dysfunction gets expressed is sometimes stereotypical to gender, but not always. If we're going to effectively help families, we have to support parents to enable them to raise children, both girls and boys, with healthy self-worth and an ability to maintain appropriate boundaries. If we can do that, we'll begin to see a change as healthier children grow up themselves, enjoy healthier lives because of better choices and lifestyles.
Right.